Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the FIA Manufacturers Championship round number 4, driving at Brands Hatch in the Group 4 cars. You can see there, starting from P3, an okay-ish lap, not a particularly great lap. I messed up my final run with obviously lighter fuel and the fresh tyres on, and was a little bit disappointed. It was going really well up until second to last corner, and I lost over 2 tenths, so it would have been close to pole position, probably would have got pole. But starting from P3, not too bad. You can see going through the grid, a few Dodge Vipers all the way down the grid. There was actually a few Dodge Vipers in this race, which actually seemed like quite a good car for this track. Going through the grid there, the Megane started. I was quite surprised to see that Megane all the way down in P9. It's a very strong car at this track, so I did expect to see that a little bit higher up the grid than P9. However, a lot of Caymans in this race. You can see P2 also. The VP driver starting in P2 is in the Cayman also, a very fast driver, so it's going to be quite a tough race to win. But I felt going into this race I was fairly confident that I could get some good points out of this. Obviously a good car for this track, the Cayman, and I was going with the soft tyres for both stints. You saw it in my stream probably if you would have watched the stream that I did practicing for the FIA before this race. I said that I was going to do both splits. It was definitely a pit stop race where you just pit for the Cayman. It was a soft, both stints done on the soft, and it seemed to be the best way to do this race. So we're going to start this race and hope for a good result. You can see starting from P3, just up ahead of me, as I said before, the VP driver, and in P1 an Alfa Romeo, which is probably the strongest car, or one of the strongest cars at this track. I think it's probably a little bit faster than the Megane around this track. It's a very nice car to be driving around this. So he managed to get pole position, although I do think that I should have really got that pole position. But gonna get underway with the TV replay camera, as everyone's gonna make their way into turn 1. So trying to make sure we get through this first few corners nice and clean without any incident. No one seems to be close enough to make any moves. There wasn't any speed burst that sometimes happen, boost. But I had a little look. You see, VP driver actually has a little look up the inside of the Alfa Romeo, as I was getting under threat from IRT Nisman going into turn 1, but I decided to go defensive. So they're going side by side, so this was good for me. And there was a little bit of contact where the Alfa Romeo ran wide, so I'm going to have a little look up the inside now. And the Dodge Viper is going to try and go up the inside of me, but he decides to back out of that. And there's a tiny bit of contact as we're both going into that corner side by side. I managed to get myself up into P2, and the Alfa Romeo actually stays out in P3, but now he's going to get out dragged all the way up the straight by the Dodge Viper. The Dodge Viper is so much faster in the straights, so quite an eventful start to the race. I'm up to P2, VP driver in the other Porsche in P1. Obviously I really do need to beat that VP driver in front of me in the Porsche. He's very close to me in the championship at the moment. I think he's actually a little bit ahead of me because of the previous round where I had a bit of a disaster when I hit the wall, but this race I really did need to finish ahead of him. So going to try and put him under some pressure straight away at the start of this race. I felt like I had the speed in this race to really be at the front of the grid. I really did want to be at the front, because I think if I was at the front I could have built up a little bit of a lead. I felt fairly confident at this combination with the Cayman. So now just going to try and put him under pressure and see if we can force him into a mistake somewhere, see if we can find the way past. Brands Hatch is obviously a very hard track to overtake, especially in Group 4 cars, because they're not the fastest, so they're fairly easy to drive. A lot of grip, so mistakes are fairly, not easy to make a mistake really. If it was Group 3, mistakes can happen, but in Group 4, fairly easy to drive, and just trying to push fairly hard now. You can see using all the track, and at the moment it seems fairly even. I am gaining a little bit here and there, obviously getting a little bit in the slipstream, a tiny bit of downforce loss through the corners, but these cars don't really suffer as much as other cars, where there is a little bit of downforce loss, but it's not like you would get on the Group 1 or the Group 2, a little bit of the Group 3. I think the Group 3 and 4 cars don't suffer as much with slipstream driving behind as obviously the faster cars with the higher downforce. So you're able to follow someone a lot easier in these Group 4 cars and then try and benefit from their slipstream. But at the moment, driving fairly okay. Not trying to push too hard at this point. I didn't want to make an error. But we're starting to get a little bit closer now. You can see gaining, every corner seems to be gaining a little bit. We're going to ride on board with P1. Looking back at myself, P3 and 4, you can see there, two Caymans at the front, and then we've got the Dodge Viper behind that in P3 and the Alfa Romeo in P4, and now starting to get really close to the VP driver in P1 and putting him under a fair bit of pressure now. I felt like I was definitely starting to feel like I had the ability to get past him. I felt like I had the speed, so trying to get a little bit more aggressive now and see if we can find the way past going into turn 1. You can see I actually ran a little bit too deep into that corner, nearly ran wide, but just got away with that, and unfortunately not able to make a move into turn 2 there, but now extremely close. You can see a little bit of rear movement there where I'm trying to get on the power really early to get as close as I can for the back straight. I felt like that was probably the best opportunity to make a move on this track, get close to the slipstream out of this corner now and see if we can work our way up straight. So we're going to go really aggressive through here now, as you can see, going really aggressive there, pushing on the power and starting to run a little bit wide, and the car, and totally lost control of the car, but just about managed to save it on the grass. However, we're now losing 2 positions behind the Alfa Romeo now, so down into P4, so not a great lap there on lap 4, a bit of a disaster through that corner. Tried to get on the power to get the slipstream to make a move going down that straight, and I actually ran wide. Luckily managed to save the rear end, but now down into P4, so this is going to be a real struggle to get a win out of this race from this situation. Obviously down in P4 and 3 cars to get past, so you know, I obviously did this race after the Nations race where I was in the lead and I got undercut, so I was kind of aware of the situation with the undercut and how much time it was worth. The only issue with this track was we were running the soft tyres, so obviously I wasn't too sure how the soft tyre would last for the remaining laps, because I'd have to do 7 laps if I was going to go for an undercut. However, one thing we know, especially from the experience from the Nations race, was that if you're going to do the undercut when the fuel's lighter, as P2 has a massive moment there in the Dodge Viper, loses control, and that puts me up to P3. So now trying to drive really aggressive and see if I can get closer to this lead group. But as I was saying, with regards to the tyres, you know, when your fuel's really light, as we run again really wide and lose some time to P2, but not a massive loss. But the tyres are really dirty now off running that a little bit wide, and you can see running wide onto the marbles, and P4 getting really close to me, IRT this man there, where I'm just trying to get the grip back from the tyres where we've just run wide. But yeah, with regards to the tyres, when the car is lighter, your tyres tend to last a little bit better. So the first stint, they're going to wear out more because the car's really heavy. But then on the second stint, when the car's lighter, they tend to last that little bit longer. So I was thinking it might be possible to hit on lap 5 in this situation. You can see at the moment I'm over 2 seconds behind P1, actually quite a distance behind him there, 2.6 seconds, 2.4 seconds, something like that. And I've got quite a big margin gap. Would I be able to get the undercut? That's what was going through my mind at this stage. I knew I had to drive quite a nice lap now all the way to the pit stop. So for this remainder of this lap and the next lap, I need to really hook it up and do quite a nice lap on these worn tyres to get to the pit stop phase of lap 5 within. I really needed to be under 2 seconds really to P1. So you're going to see trying to drive fairly smooth but aggressive at the same time, seeing if I can gain that gap. You can see P4 really close behind me in the other Porsche, and the Alfa Romeo putting P1 under it. Looks like he's getting closer to that slipstream, so hopefully he can start putting him under some pressure and maybe force P1 into a few errors that could make me a little bit closer as I go into the pits. It's going to be fairly close. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make this undercut work to get me into P1. However, I was hoping I'd at least be able to jump if I go for it, the Alfa Romeo that's in front of me. However, I did think the Alfa Romeo might go for this strategy as well, because the Alfa Romeo, as most people will know, is very, very nice on its tyres. So I had the feeling that he might go for either the undercut, or he could even be possibly on a no-stop strategy on the medium tyres, although his speed does look fairly fast from the start to be running the medium tyres, although the car is a little bit stronger at this track. So I really wasn't too sure. So I decided I was going to pit this lap. Obviously, I'd learnt from the Nations race about the undercut. It seems really overpowered at the moment with the way they're doing the tyre wear. Obviously, it was only like times 4 or 5 tyre wear, but we're running the softer tyres, so the undercut's really strong, because when you put them fresh tyres on, they're so much faster than the old soft tyres. So I did think about this, and I thought, right, we've got this gap under 2 seconds. We've actually caught up to P1 quite a bit. He seems to be struggling on the in-lap. Really aggressive into the pit lane. Got that absolutely perfect on the pit entry. Skimming the wall nearly and into the pits, and just to change the tyres. No fuel obviously needed now in the FIA races. driving flat out now in these races, much more entertaining like that. However, the tyres now are the issue. So we've now got fresh tyres on, but I've got to do 7 laps now on these soft tyres. So that's going to be the challenge. The outlap needs to be really good though, so I've got to go really aggressive on this outlap, drive really smooth and push fairly hard, because I felt like if I can push really hard, there's a possibility we might be able to get out in the lead. And obviously track position is massively important at this track because it's so hard to overtake. The only issue is going to be obviously with that extra lap on the soft tyres. Will it cause me issues at any point if I do manage to get into either P2 or P1? It's going to be so close with P1, I was thinking at this stage, because yeah, he was 2 seconds ahead when I went in the pits, and I didn't think it was going to be worth a full 2 seconds at Brands Hatch. It's not a particularly long lap, but we're actually driving a really nice lap so far. You can see hooking up the corners, getting on the pound nice and early, trying to drive aggressive without taking too much life out the tyres. Obviously, you know, these soft tyres, they don't, if you drive overly aggressive and slide the rear about, that's when they run, you know, they lose their tyre life. If you start sliding the rear and, you know, understeering and pushing the fronts too much, that's when the life starts coming out the tyres. You've got to be really smooth, and so far this lap has pretty much been a perfect outlap. This is what I needed to do, a really aggressive, smooth at the same time outlap to really see if I can get the jump on P2. It looks like P1's actually stayed out on that Alfa Romeo. So let's have a little look now as we go in the pit, come out the pits, and we've actually jumped the VP driver who was in P1. That is massive. You can see actually we're now over 1.5 seconds ahead. So that's such a 3.5 seconds we've gained with that undercut, and this is what I'm talking about now. This is showing how strong the undercut is now since they've changed the way of doing the tyres with the higher tyre wear. So the undercut now is massively, it seems like the strongest way to do these races. You can see obviously in the Nations race it happened to me. So for this race I've turned it around and I've gone for the undercut. So I'm actually ahead of who is technically was P1 P3. I think the P1 driver now has made a mistake staying out that long in the Alfa Romeo. If the tyres are that good on the Alfa Romeo, he should have pitted lap 4 and then tried to do an undercut that way, and I think he would have really benefited from that. But you can see I'm actually got him in sights now. We're under 6 seconds from him, and I think the pit stop's worth over seconds. It's nearly 8-second pit stop, so this is looking fairly good for myself. A bit of a mistaken strategy from P1, and this is what I'm saying now. There's no point trying to do any sort of overcut or halfway. It just seems like the best way is to do the undercut if you can manage the tyres. That is, you know, if you can't manage the tyres, then you probably do have to split it as pretty much 50-50 if possible, or if it's an odd number, I'd always do the shorter stint on the first from now on though, because the tyre wear, the issue with the fuel and how it affects your tyres is a big, definitely a big thing to happen. You know, if your car is lighter, it doesn't take the wear out of the tyres anymore. So you can see P2 not actually gaining so far. I did expect him to be able to gain a little bit more than what he's doing so far. I've actually increased the lead on the second lap on the tyres. Now I did expect on the out lap when them fresh tyres are on P2, you know, that's when they've got their most grip and they're so grippy at that stage. So I did expect him to gain a few tenths on me, but I actually managed to do quite a nice lap there. It wasn't the fastest lap in the race, but it was an okay lap that's actually put me still 1.7, 1.8 seconds ahead. So now I've got to hold on to this lead and try and see if I can keep him out the slipstream for as long as possible. If I can keep him out the slipstream for another couple of laps, it's going to come down to the final 2 laps if he can get past. So this is going to be so close whether he's going to be able to do this. And I have to say, this was quite nervous. You know, I really wanted the win in this race after what happened to me in the Nations race. So I was really trying to keep it smooth, not take too much life out of these tyres, but still driving aggressive. It's not an easy thing to do. You will notice if you ever make a little mistake and slide the rears on the soft tyres, you will find that the life, you can see it go down with the ×4 wear. So that's one thing you really want to avoid doing, is any form of sliding. You can see I'm trying to be really smooth with the inputs, but still driving fairly fast. You can see he's starting to gain a little bit now. He's got it down to about 1.4, 1.5 seconds. So he's gained a few tenths there, but the thing is, I've just got to make sure I don't push too hard. That is a really important thing. I've just got to keep it smooth. If I overdrive it, I could come unstuck towards the end. But you can see he's getting close to picking up that slipstream, but still not in the slipstream. And this is going really well. I've actually managed to increase the gap a bit, back up to 1.4, 1.5 seconds. So it's going to be a fairly intense end to this race. You can see on the replay camera in the top right hand corner, he's fairly close. You can see the Alfa Romeo, a very big mistake by the Alfa Romeo driver to not pit either halfway or a lap early, because with that car's ability on the tyres, I was so shocked that he stayed out on the first stint and just lost track position at a track like Brands Hatch, because Brands Hatch, you know, it's very hard to overtake on. So a little bit of a mistaken strategy there, but I've obviously learned from the Nations race about the undercut now, and that's why I'll pretty much, the majority of times, I'm going to always look to see if there was a gap on the map, and luckily for me I did look on this one and there was a nice gap for me to come out. And you know, it's not always easy to judge the gap because it just depends how long the pit stop takes, but you can get a rough idea, and if it looks on, I will always try and go for the undercut, I think, now, because it's something I would recommend to everyone. Because just look at this situation, you know, I was nearly 3 seconds behind P1 going into, I think it was the start of lap 4. And now as we go a little bit wide, there is obviously now the tyre wear is kicking in, and you can see he's getting so close to picking up that slipstream. This is going to be really close. He's actually got within, I think he's actually might be in the slipstream at this stage, as I'm trying to keep it smooth. He's putting pressure on. Obviously then the extra lap that he hasn't done on the tyres is really going to start paying off on these last few laps. But at the moment, I'm doing a great job. I'm keeping it smooth. I'm keeping it on the track, and that's the most important thing, because as long as I keep reasonable lines, he's going to find it extremely hard to get past. Obviously, he's going to be able to get the slipstream, but we're in the same car, so straight line speed he's only going to get the gains from the slipstream down the straight. And will he be able to get enough? As long as I get good exits off that corner there, and obviously the final corner going into turn 1, I think I thought he's going to find it hard to get past, although the worry for me was obviously the final lap. Will he eventually pick me off on that final lap when my tyres are pretty much crying out, because I hadn't done the 7 laps on these tyres. I didn't practice it in the practice session. I just went straight into, obviously, we did, I think it was 2 practice sessions where I did one on the, I think I did a medium. Did we do one on this? I can't remember. It might have been just one practice at Brands Hatch on the softer tyres. I think I actually made a mistake in the second practice session, but you can see he's so close now, and he's actually going to be putting me under a lot of pressure as we come into the final 2 laps now. The end of lap 10 there, and you can see I've managed to hold him off enough so he can't make a move into turn 1. And he actually runs a little bit wide there, where now obviously his tyres are starting to suffer, obviously being in the slipstream and obviously losing a little bit of downforce, not a massive amount. Is that affecting his tyres? It probably is a little bit, but I still think my tyres were going to be in a worse condition than his as we come into, obviously, now lap 11. So this is now just 2 laps to go. Can I manage to hold on to this P1? You can see I've actually got the gap back over 1 second briefly there. So he's going to be not really getting much of an advantage on the slipstream, and this is great for me to be able to hold on at this stage of the race in P1. And maintaining. I really didn't expect this to be the case, obviously, before the pit stop phase. I expected I was going to come out just behind the VP driver, but at the moment we're actually in the lead, and it's going to be just a case of, can I hold on to this P1 all the way to the end? If I can manage to do this, this will be a great result from down in P4 before obviously that big mistake that happened. I mean, I think if I would have been in P2, the undercut would have been even stronger, and then it would have been a comfortable win pitting on lap 5. I knew I was going to go for the lap 5 pit after the Nations race, because obviously I saw how strong that the undercut was, so I was going to go try it out in this race, and I think it would have been obviously fairly comfortable, like I say, if I would have done it, if I wouldn't have made that mistake. But now I'm going to be put under a lot of pressure as we go into the final corner. The VP driver obviously getting closer and closer. He's 7/10 behind, trying to get a good exit off that corner. I've managed to do that corner really nice, and that has meant that he's not going to be able to put a move on me going into turn 1. Trying to break the toe briefly as we go into turn 1 for the final time. Important to really try not to take too much speed into this corner with that front left hand tyre really starting to suffer, and actually did that really nicely, and still managing to keep him out of the zone. Obviously now the important part is going to be going onto the straight in the middle of the lap. That's going to be his next overtaking opportunity, so I've got to try and keep this section nice and smooth, get on the power nice and early, but try not to make any errors, try not to lose control of the rear, try and keep all the power going down onto that tyre and without spinning the rears up. So down into second gear, try and take a tight line and try and get a good solid exit, and we actually did. I actually managed to get a nice exit from that corner. Will he be able to pick up a slip? He's got the slipstream, but he's too far back to really make a move. So you can see I'm not even going to go defensive. I'm going to make sure that I can hold my line and take as much speed through this corner as possible, because this is another overtaking opportunity, but he can't make that move there either. And again, I've managed to hold him off for the fight, that that final overtaking opportunity really is. Now I've just got to pretty much hold it on the track to the end. It's going to be so intense as we come through to the final corner. Obviously, that's where another chance will be. But if I can go defensive, it's really easy to defend this final corner. You know, you can kind of mess your speed up a bit, but if you stick the car in the middle like I'm doing now, he can't go on the inside, he can't go on the outside. That's just pretty much the perfect defence. And now just trying to get on the power nice and early. He's picking up that slipstream. I'm going to go over to the right hand side to make sure that he cannot go down the inside. And you can see going to the finishing line, and I've managed to take the win from that race. So a really good result from pretty much not a great position, being in P4 at one stage. And in the end, I actually take the win and quite a bit ahead of P3 and 4. So that race went really well, to be fair. I think obviously if I would have been able to, if I wouldn't have made the mistakes and was battling for the lead on up to lap 5, I would have had a fairly comfortable win. But there were so many mistakes that I made in that race. Putting myself obviously not on pole position was the first mistake, and then the second mistake was obviously making that error. I made a couple of errors running wide, but somehow managed to get that back and take the win in the race. So really happy with that. An okay amount of points. Again, it was a strange one. I picked quite a normally a popular time for the race. Unfortunately, the points were only 2,000. I think it was 2,200 and something. So not too bad. Coming away with some reasonable points again. And the important thing is I managed to get ahead of the VP driver, who I'm obviously battling with in the championship. I think Org is a little bit further, a few hundred points ahead of us. But as long as I stay within touching distance, obviously there's still a few more rounds left in the season, and you can see picking up the win. So another win in the FIA series, which is I think I can't remember how many wins I've had now in the series, but it's more than 10 in the top split now. So doing okay in these FIA races, and pretty much a perfect race after that pit stop. I think I did really well there. You see 2,232 points, and looked after the tyres and drove pretty much perfect after the pit stop. The first stint wasn't great, was making some errors, but after that really put the my foot down and kept it smooth, and managed to come away with another win. So a really good result. I hope you enjoyed that video. I know I enjoyed in the race. I was really it was really intense when racing, I have to say. I was really panicking at the end, thinking he might be able to get me on that final lap, but managed to hold my nerve and come over the line in P1. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed. Make sure you hit that notification button so you don't miss any future videos. I do upload as much as possible, and obviously streaming as well. I was going to stream today, but I'm not going to be able to stream because I want to try and clean my pedals out and try and get rid of the squeaking sound. You may have seen, if you follow me on Twitter, I actually had a claim against my video from Sony Music saying that my pedals was a match to some classical song. So a bit of a strange one, and they've upheld the claim as well, even after I've disputed it. So I'm gonna have to clean them up, get them obviously making sure there's no squeaking, put some grease on the all the joints and stuff, and see if I can get rid of that. But it's a strange one. But anyway, thanks again for watching this video. Make sure you come back tomorrow for another video on the channel. Hopefully I have the daily race track guides out tomorrow. I don't think I'm gonna have time to get the FIA track guides out because I just haven't even practiced yet, so I need to get on and actually learn one of the tracks. If I have time to obviously get on and do that, I will do that, but it's probably going to be the daily track guides tomorrow. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'll be back very soon.